just 4-betting close to the full 3x, or actually more, given that he only 3-bet to 3750. And we'll be calling it off if he jams. Expect him to jam, 16 combinations. Okay, so he does jam. Expect him to jam 16 combinations of ace king.
Hello, and welcome to the Chasing Poker Greatness YouTube channel. Today's video is another 500 NL Plan Explain. As always, if you have any questions about my play or the CPG Wolves Coaching for Profits program, please leave them below in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed today's Plan Explain.
So I got a comment or a question, I guess, on my latest P&E, just asking me to go into a little bit of detail about the HUD and whatever other software I use while I'm playing. We'll take this top left table and use this one as an example. So the first row of my HUD is very simple, just pre-flop stats. VPIP is the 50, the first 33 is PFR, pre-flop raise percentage, and the second 33 is my 3-bet frequency. Then you see the H with the little colon, that's the number of hands that I've played at the table. You can also see the number of hands that everyone else has played at the table. Sorry, just getting into the action a little bit. Probably just going to check this 7 down and try to get to showdown, beat pocket 6s and I don't know, 5s, 4s, 3s, deuces. So yeah, that's my HUD. Then you can see the action tracker that's right under the BB, the table. So that's going to be a hockey software called Intuitive Tables. Intuitive Tables lets me just, press a keystroke to set my bet sizes and my pre-flop raise size. But I think the other helpful thing that it does is keep track of action. So you can see player 1 here has open raise to 15, and that's what the OR 15 is denoting. Yeah, and you can also it'll get into some post-flop stuff too. So you'll be able to see what size people bet post-flop, or whether they check or raise or that kind of stuff. But yeah, that action tracking software and the hockey software I use is Intuitive Tables, and the HUD that I'm using right now is Hold'em Manager 3. And yeah, I think the bare bones stats are really all you need, or they're basically like the only stats that I think are really important when you're playing on an anonymous site like Bovada. I'm sure if you've seen some other HUDs, you can get into some really, really deep stats like turn, float frequency, river, check raise frequency. But when you're playing on an anonymous site like Bovada, you just don't get enough of a sample size to really have those stats be very meaningful. So I just choose to display some really kind of fundamental stats, pre-flop frequencies, and then how often they c-bet the flop or not. And I've messed around with adding other stats and trying to see whether I actually get an opportunity to reference them or not. But what I've noticed is that these are pretty much the only stats that I really act upon or really need to help guide my decision-making process. And again, that's just due to the fact that when you're playing on an anonymous site, you rarely get more than a couple hundred hands on any one player. And on average, you get way, way, way less than a few hundred hands. So yeah, that's my explanation for the two pieces of software that I use. Again, it's Hold'em Manager 3 for my HUD and Intuitive Tables for my hotkeys and action tracking. So up here, table number 1, facing the hijack open, definitely going to be 3-betting Queen Jack of Hearts from the big blind. No action. Same table, opening Queen 8 of Diamonds, blind versus blind. Pretty decent flop. Just going to be doing a lot of checking when I'm out of position. That's just generally my strategy, out of position PFR, even with an overcard and a gut shot. Now I'm going to start doing some barreling. Because I'm doing a lot of checking on the flop, my turn range is also going to include most of my trips. And I think this, Queen 8 of Diamonds makes a very natural delay c-bet. And we get it through. ISOing Queen Jack offsuit. I think we have a fish in seat 6 and in seat 3. So really nice to go 3 ways with 2 fish on the line. Just going to start with a check here on Queen 3-3. I think there's a lot of value in letting one of these guys just start to stab with what I assume is a way too wide of a peeling range like this. I'm going to do something a little bit spicier and go for a small raise on the turn. I think I can just get a ton of value from a whole bunch of their draws and maybe worse Queen X, maybe 5X. Probably going to be checking back this river. Obviously not getting called by any of the brick draws anymore, and I think a decent amount of their range, especially when I have a queen, is going to be some sort of 5. Nice. And yeah, that works out pretty well versus the bricked flush draw. Facing small blind open can definitely 3-bet. Ace-9 of diamonds can also flat. Gonna go with flat this time. Flop top pair weak kicker. Probably gonna check this one back if I do get a chance to check. And obviously won't be folding to a bet, especially not one that is this small. Turn of flush draw, and he snap over bets the turn. Don't love the size, but obviously not doing any folding here once I turn a 4th diamond. River 2 pair. Now we definitely beat some of his value on the turn. His A6, his King 10s, his King 6 suited, 10-6 suited, that type of stuff. Curious to see what action he's going to take on the river. I expect his bluffs to be like some sort of Jack X or Queen X, maybe even one that picked up like a diamond draw itself on the turn. Face a really small overbet on the river. I don't. I mean, there's just so many natural hands that beat me, but I think facing the small overbet, I'm just gonna pay it off with the Ace-9 of diamonds. Don't love this, but again, okay. I think that there's a small chance that he could be value betting worse, like King 10 or A6. And then obviously we beat all the whatever bluffs he decides to bluff with. But again, obviously not shocked to lose to the PFR on an Ace King 10 flop. Just kind of an unfortunate run out there where we river a hand I think that's just strong enough to pay off. Opening Jack 9 of spades here. So just going into a little bit more detail on how I use the HUD. This player in the big blind, although we've only seen 25 hands, he's playing 44-16. So I think he's leaning more towards like the fishy side, or maybe even just a straight up whale. 2 overs and 2 backdoors. Just going to start out with a half pot c-bet. Generally going to be doing a lot of c-betting with my air region, or my bluff region, versus someone who's playing 44-16. Kind of the way that I'm interpreting that stat is that if they're playing 46% of hands, or if they're playing way too many hands pre-flop, they're generally going to struggle to connect with pretty much any board texture, or just have a strong hand on any board texture, which means that I think they are very likely to be overfolding, definitely on the flop. And that's just, there's almost nothing you can do when you play too many hands pre-flop. There's almost no way that you can not overfold unless you're just calling with nothing, because so much of the time you're going to be flopping nothing when you play almost half of the hands that you're dealt. So yeah, just an example of how I start using the HUD stats. And obviously, again, at 29 hands, I'm going to be wary of making too big of an assumption, but 44-15, the pretty big gap between the VPIP and the PFR, I'm starting to get pretty confident that this player C2 on the top right table is leaning towards the fishy side. We face a flat from the cutoff. That's also, I mean, this guy's playing 20-15 over 88 hands. So looking at his stats, like I might actually think that he's just like a nitty reg, or maybe a reg that's running a little bit poorly pre-flop over this 88 hand sample. But once this player finds a flat in the cutoff, which is very, very unorthodox in 6-max cash, or it's not something that very many regs do. I am pretty confident that this player's a fish. Actually just going to start out by checking the flop and give them a chance to stab. Once they check back, obviously just going for the value myself. Maybe checking the flop versus someone who's playing 20-15 isn't as valuable as checking the flop versus someone who's playing like the 44-16, like the player 2 above. Now just gonna go for a pretty meaty value bet on the river and try to target some sort of 10 pocket 9s, pocket 8s. Sweet. And see what this guy called down with. A6 of hearts. So yeah, I mean, definitely not a reg once they find a flat in the cutoff with A6 of hearts. Certainly 3-betting queens versus an under the gun open. Oh, okay. So we face a cutoff 3-bet, so I'm going to go from 3-betting to 4-betting, and my 4-bet size, my in-position cold 4-bet size is just going to be slightly larger than a click. This sizing mistake that I actually notice a lot of lower stakes players and some of the players that I coach making. I think a lot of players who come from the live realm size too large for their in-position 4-bets and make it something closer to like 120 or like 3x the 3-bet size. But if you spend any time like kind of looking through pre-flop ranges or pre-flop sizings and let's say like GTO Wizard or Munker or some sort of other solved ranges, what you'll notice is that the IP 4-bet size is very, very small. It's actually very small regardless of whether you're cold 4ing or just 4-betting after you open. So yeah, just a quick little digression into in-position 4-bet sizing. Defending ace-jack offsuit in the big blind, bottom left table. Pretty good flop. Versus the small c-bet size, I think this hand will certainly make it into my flop check raise range. He does not go small, so now I am going to be doing a bunch more check calling and way less check raising. Interesting turn. So he goes for a pretty meaty turn c-bet size again. Not surprising after the big size on the flop. I think I'm actually just going to continue check calling with this hand. Just want to make sure that I have enough strong hands in my range, in my check call range, that can comfortably handle 3 barrels. Maybe this hand can go into a check raise range and I can just check call like ace 5, ace 4, that type of stuff. But really, really nice to have some super strong hands in my check calling range so that if he does do something like overbet the river or like 2x jam the river, I can still find some check calls. Obviously on that river I'd be check calling hands like ace 5 and ace 4 suited even for some really big barrel, but couldn't know that I was going to river a boat on the turn. So just keeping my check call range somewhat protected so that I don't put all of my good hands and only get left with hands that have to check fold the river facing a huge third barrel if I'm doing something like check raising my ace jack on the turn there. Opening aces in the top left table. Get 3-bet by a pretty active player. He's playing 41, 33, 18. Again, only over 29 hands, so don't want to make too many big assumptions, but I mean, obviously versus any type of player, I'm going to be 4-betting this hand. And you can see here, I guess, like my out of position 4-bet size is significantly larger than my in position 4-bet size. It's going to be something much closer to just the full 3x. Wouldn't expect it. Wouldn't be shocked to see this player do quite a bit of folding given that he's 3-betting 18% of hands. So I assume that he 3-bets quite few hands that can't call a 4-bet, but this time he does call. Okay, so 4-bet pot out of position as PFR. Just going to be starting out with small quarter pot c-bet, or I guess 1/5 pot. Jack pairs on the turn. Obviously not my favorite turn card. Still going to continue value betting this hand. Obviously can still target hands like queens, 10s, 9s, that stuff for value, and his draws. Assume that an 18% 3-better preflop is going to have hands like 6-5 suited, 7-6 suited, 8-9 suited, 10-9 suited, and some other flush draws, king queen suited, maybe even queen 10 suited. I don't know if queen 10 peels the 4-bet. And this is like a turn spot where like my 4-bet range is not going to be completely naked of trips. Like I'm going to be 4-betting hands like king jack suited and ace jack suited from out of position. And now river seems pretty close. Leaning towards just checking here. Again, reading into the 18% 3-bet a little bit and assuming that this guy is going to have a lot of hands, more hands than usual to bluff the river. A little bit sad when I miss out on value from like 10s and 9s, which I think will call the river, or obviously queens, although queens might just value jam the river themselves. Obviously a little bit sad to miss out on those combos of bluff catchers because I assume they'll just do quite a bit of checking back. But on the flip side, I give his, again, 5-6 suited, 6-7 suited, 10-9 suited, king queen of diamonds, like all those hands, an opportunity to bluff the river. And just off the top of my head, it seems like there's a comparable number of those suited hands as there are to the 18 combos of queens, 10s, 9s, and like I said, I think queens might even find a value bet themselves on the river. So he checks back. Bottom left, opening pocket queens in the cutoff. Get 3-bet by an unknown on the button. 3-bet size is very standard though, maybe like a touch small, but can't really say anything about his 3-bet size. So gonna assume he is leaning towards the reg side. That's generally my assumption when I don't have too much to go on. And again, just 4-betting close to the full 3x, or actually more, given that he only 3-bet to 3750. And we'll be calling it off if he jams. Expect him to jam, 16 combination. Okay, so he does jam. Expect him to jam 16 combinations of ace king in the spot. So, unfortunate. Queen. No. Yeah. I don't know. Pretty standard spot there. Cutoff versus button, I think, or pretty standard spot to get stacked. Just unfortunate to run into the actual top of his range instead of some sort of hand that we're flipping with, or he might be bluffing pre-flop.
Thanks for watching today's P&E. A little bit of a bummer to end the session with my queens running into the button's kings, but hey, that's how sessions go sometimes. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to our channel. It helps us out a lot and lets us know what type of content you'd like to see in the future. Thanks again for watching today's P&E.
This is Chasing Poker Greatness. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.